Hi, welcome to episode 2 of the Kimony's products video series. I'll review Kimony's grip lineup and explain why it offers something for every player's needs. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so let's take a look at the 6 overgrips that Kimony has in their line, 5 of which are tacky and 1 is a dry overgrip. So if you take a look at these charts, I'm going to have 6 of them, but we'll start off with the Kimony High Soft EX. And I have listed below that, if you're looking at the first column, some of the competing overgrips that I picked out. So we have the Yonex Super Grip, the Wilson Pro Overgrip, and the Prince Tacky Pro. In the next column, you'll notice price, and I have TW that's listed on the Tennis Warehouse website, except for the Kimony. So you have the prices there. So they're all pretty comparable. The Prince Tacky Pro coming out at the cheapest one at $4.99. Now the specifications, that is the thickness and the width. So luckily, a lot of these have those specifications listed on there. So I just thought it would be interesting to list them. So you can see of the 4 that the Kimony is the thinnest at 5.5 millimeters. And then you'll see that there's also the width. There's one there, the Wilson Pro. I'm guessing it's 6 millimeters. There was nothing listed on the packaging, but just based on when I wrap it, it's pretty comparable to the, most comparable to the Yonex Super Grip. All right, so now we're going to talk about the notes. And what I did is I actually had some of my clients that use the Yonex and the Wilson, and I use the Prince to review them and give me their comments. And what I have here on the first line, I have number 1 for lasting tackiness on the Kimony High Soft EX. So of these overgrips, the Kimony seemed to last the longest in terms of tackiness. So if you look at the Yonex and the Wilson, I gave them a number 2 ranking. And then the Prince came out at number 3 in terms of lasting tackiness. Now, one of the things that I like, going back to the Kimony here under notes, it's a Japanese brand, but it's actually made in Japan. So that's pretty cool, I think. So it's right there. Now, I always thought that Yonex was the same, but it's a Japanese brand, but it's made in Indonesia. So that was kind of disappointing. But curious enough, the Wilson Pro Overgrip is also made in Indonesia, and I'll get into similarities between these two. And then the Prince Tacky Pro is made in Taiwan. The next thing I wanted to point out was the slim packaging of the Kimony High Soft EX. So I like the fact that the packaging is very slim. It doesn't take much to ship this, really, because it's so flat, and it's just a plastic casing, so there's no cardboard or anything like that. So I like the fact that it's very slim. One of the cons, though, I noticed that with the Kimony is that the trim tape is, I'm saying it's non-sticky. It does stick, but what I notice is that I have a racket here, is that after you put the tape on, it does tend to come off or come up. So if you have a racket with a collar, one of these rubber collars, you can just put it right over. But if you don't have one of those, I noticed that it just tends to lift up, unlike the other overgrips. All right, so now we're going to talk about the notes of the other overgrips. So as I mentioned on the Yonex, it's made in Indonesia. Now what's kind of interesting is that since the Wilson and the Yonex are both made in Indonesia, they have a similar cut. And what I mean by that is that, and if you've had these grips before, you know what I mean, is this is a Yonex grip, but you see that little notch there, right at the tapered end, right there? I'm not sure why all the Wilson and Yonex overgrips have that, but to me it's kind of annoying. I actually cut that little tab off when I'm wrapping these because I don't like that thing sticking up at the butt cap. So that's something that I don't like about these grips. The Prince, however, is straight, so it's similar to the, I'll show you one of the Kimony ones. So you can see the tapered end, how, oh, it's on this side. It's just straight. So I like the fact that it's nice and clean. It has a nice clean cut. Another thing that's puzzling to me is why do the trim tape, and this is true for the Prince, the Yonex, and the Wilson, when you take it off, it actually has an extra piece. Now I'm getting really picky. So what I mean by that is the backing. So you can see that there's this piece right here and this piece right here. So whenever you have to apply the trim tape, there's always these two extra pieces that you have to take off. I like the fact that the Kimony only has this one piece. So you just take it off and then you just apply it onto the grip. So to me, that was convenient. One final note about the Kimony is that everything on the packaging is in Japanese, and I don't read Japanese, so well, there is some English writing below some of these descriptions here. But when I first got these, it was hard for me to remember which one is the difference between all the overgrips. But I figured it out, and it was pretty smart, I think. I noticed that on each of the packaging, it has a different color label right here. So I'll show you the other ones later, but you'll notice that on the chart, I actually tried to match the color of this label to the label on the chart. So you'll see that later. So I appreciate the color coding. The second overgrip is called punched. And what it is, it's a perforated overgrip. So you can see that here. You can see the holes in that. And let's take a look at this chart here. And you notice that it's highlighted in a lavender background. So earlier it was the teal colored one. So again, that's how I can tell the difference between overgrips to overgrips. So we're gonna take a look at the Kimony punched. It comes in 1, 3, and a 10 pack, and it comes in the same 15 colors as the High Soft EX. And below that I have the Prince Resi Pro as the competing overgrip. The next column is the price, coming in at $7 and $4.99. The specifications are similar to the previous one. And under notes, between these two, I felt the Kimony came on number one in terms of lasting tackiness. Now I did try, I don't normally use the perforated overgrip. I use the Prince Tacky Pro, as I mentioned earlier. But I did do a play test between the punched and the High Soft EX. And they, I would say that the High Soft EX had longer lasting tackiness. But what was kind of interesting about this punch grip was as it started to wear, it felt, I could actually feel like the holes were, almost felt like it was a textured surface. And it started to feel more like a dry overgrip. So that was interesting. So in terms of tackiness, this would be a little bit more than this. My final note under Prince Resi Pro, base grip for custom wrap, and that's my custom overgrip wrap. And if you want to watch that video, you'll know what I mean by custom overgrip wrap. But I like the fact that these perforated grips, or specifically the Prince, it has a hole, so it allows me to move the grip and angle it so that there's less folds in the overgrip, especially over the butt cap. So I like it for that. The other thing is that it's at 0.6 millimeters. That's a perfect thickness to increase a grip size by 1. And because it's 25 millimeters in width, it's a little bit easier for me to angle the grip over the butt cap and get it nice and flush. But in terms of lasting tackiness, the Kimony came out on top. What makes this next overgrip unique is its thickness, or maybe I should say thinness. It's called a High Soft Ultra Thin, and it's coming in at 0.33 millimeters in thickness, and it's the same width at 29 millimeters. It comes in a 1 or a 3 pack, but it only comes in black or white. Now, if you take a look at the description on the website, this is what it says about it. It provides a thin, high-stretch felt-like surface. The tape does not increase the grip size and keeps the grip truer to its original size. Not as durable as the other grip tapes, but still provides ultimate tackiness. I had one of my clients actually try this overgrip, and so far he said he likes the feel, but he hasn't had it long enough to see how durable it is. But I thought we should put it to the test to see how true it is to the original grip when wrapped compared to a typical overgrip. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one, and then I'll wrap another one that's 0.5 millimeters, and then I'll take a measurement to see what the difference is on the two grips. All right, so I have a racket here that's 4 1/8, but due to compression, right now it's actually between, it's a half size smaller than a 4 1/8. So that's what we're working at in terms of the base grip. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll start with the 0.5 millimeter thickness overgrip and wrap this, and we'll take a measurement. All right, so it started off between a half size smaller than a 4 1/8. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is take a measurement and see where we're at now. So it's between a 1 and a 2. So it did increase it by 1 entire grip size. And that's pretty typical, as I mentioned, of a 0.6 millimeter overgrip. So I'll go ahead and try and hold this, and hopefully you can see that. On this grip sizer, all the bold lines is the actual grip size with the number. And if it's on that thin line, you can see it right there. That means it's in between sizes. So right now it's between a 1 and a 2. So I'll go ahead and take this off, and we'll see what the difference is when we wrap the ultra thin overgrip. All right, here's the moment of truth. We'll take a look at the measurement on this ultra thin. And on this one, it's coming right at 4 1/8. So let me go ahead and make sure this thing is taut so you can see what the actual measurement, there it is, right there. So you can see that that line is now on that bold mark right there under, and there's a 1 under there. So it's exactly 4 1/8. So you can see that the ultra thin did build it up, but only a half size. Now when I was wrapping this overgrip, it felt a lot like the old Babolat Gripsy. And if you can remember what that was, it was back in the 80s. It was super thin, but it feels pretty good. I mean, it's tacky, but again, in terms of durability, I don't know for sure. Next, we're gonna go from the thinnest overgrip to the thickest in the Kimony grip lineup. So we have this grip called a Forte. It comes in a 1-pack, and it's only in white. I did have one in here, but I only had one sample. It comes in at 0.68 millimeters, and I did something interesting with this overgrip. But before I explain that, let's take a look at the notes. I have here overgrip to increase size. So if you use this as an overgrip, it will increase your grip size by about half a size. Under here, I also have base grip to reduce size. So here's what I did with this sample that I had. I had a client that had a grip that was measuring a half size larger than a 4 3/8, but I wanted to have her to play with a 4 3/8, but to be able to replace the overgrip and have a true 4 3/8. So what I did is I took off the original base grip, then I replaced it with this, and then I wrapped the overgrip on top of this, and now her grip is measuring at a true 4 3/8, and she can replace her overgrip and still have that grip size. If you're also the type of player that likes that firm feel of a grip, and some people do this where they wrap the overgrip on top of the pallet, you could use this as an option to give your hand a little bit more padding. So there's really two ways that you can use this overgrip. You can use it as an overgrip to increase the grip size, or you can use it as a base grip to decrease the grip size. This next grip is a very unique overgrip. It's called a punch spiral. And basically what it is, it has these ridges in it. So I'll show you what it looks like in the back. But it has this rubber ridge that's on the back. So when you wrap it, it does raise it. So the thickness varies from 0.5 millimeters to 3.1 because of the fact that it has that extra thickness. It does come in a 1 pack, and it comes in 15 colors, so that's a great option. I find that this grip works really well for players that have arthritis, because typically you want to have a larger grip anyway, but having these ridges protrude from the surface does allow the player to more effectively hold the racket with a little bit better grip. I've even used this overgrip on pickleball paddles, so it's pretty versatile. So I'll go ahead and wrap this on a racket so you can see what it looks like wrapped. As mentioned earlier, Kimony does feature one dry overgrip, and it's called the Neo Dry. It comes in a 1 or a 3 pack, and it comes either in black or white as the colors. Now let's take a look at each of the overgrips here. I have the specifications of the Neo Dry at 0.5 millimeters and 29 millimeters in width, which is similar to the High Soft EX. Of the overgrips that I have here, I'm ranking this number 1 in terms of lasting dryness. I just felt that over time, comparing it to the Yonex and the Tourna Tough, it just felt drier for a longer period of time. And what I liked about the Neo Dry is that from the very beginning when you wrapped it, it just felt dry. So now let's talk about the comparable overgrips that I have here. So I have two of the Yonex's dry overgrips. The first one is the current one. It's called the Dry Super Grap, and the original one was called just Dry Grap. With the new one, it's actually thinner than the original one. It's you can see there it's 0.5 millimeters, and the original one was 0.65. What I did like about the original one, it did feel dry from the beginning, whereas the newer version, even though it's thinner and doesn't build up the grip, I just felt like there was a break-in period. So when you first wrap this overgrip, it does feel slightly tacky, and then as you use it, it actually feels more of a dry grip. In the end, it did last longer than the next one I'm going to talk about. So this is the Tourna Tough, which is the improved version of the original Tourna Grip. And I do like this better than Tourna Grip because of that fact. I'm not sure what the thickness is, so I have a question mark there. But I had to have it as number 3 in lasting dryness. And there is a slight break-in period, and it's quite different from the original Tourna Grip, where it does feel dry from the beginning. One of the downsides is that it has no tapered end. As you know, it just comes squared off like this. In fact, I cut it off at a tapered so that I get that tapered end. One of the pros of this Tourna Tough, though, is you can actually use either side of the overgrip. I typically would use the side that has the cellophane on it, and that's the side your hand's going to be touching. But on the packaging, it said you can use either side. So I guess you could use it once on one side and turn it over and use it on the other. But again, going back to the Neo Dry, I just rank this as number 1 in terms of lasting dryness. Kimony does have one replacement grip in their product lineup. And like some of their other overgrips already mentioned, this one's quite unique. It is a leather grip, so if you're into leather grips, I hope you find this next segment interesting. And if you're wondering what leather grips appeal is, stay tuned. Alright, so let's get right into it. So here are some of the reasons why players use a leather grip. 1, to add more weight to the handle of a racket. 2, to optimize the feel of the beveled edges of the grip. 3, to enhance the overall feel of the frame by firming up the grip and optimizing the connection to the ball. And there is a 4th reason, which I'll reveal at the end of this video. So in this last segment of this review, what I plan to do is compare the Kimony Expert Techni leather grip, and I have a fairway double-handed, and the Tennis Warehouse private label. This is the thinner version. So what I'm going to do is wrap this racket. I'll take the weight difference and the overall grip size difference. Alright, so let's take a look at the readings on this chart. And on the first row, I have the Kimony Expert Techni grip. It's coming in at $22. And here are the specs at 0.8 millimeters and 25 millimeters in width. So under notes, after I wrapped it, the grip was 4 1/4, but it came out 1.5 sizes smaller after I wrapped it. And the total weight of the cut version of this is 9 grams. So if you compare that to the original synthetic grip, which is 20, and this is 9, so it reduces by half the weight. But it did get you could definitely feel the bevel edges of the grip because of the fact that it's so thin. On the next one with the Tennis Warehouse private label at $9.95, that's a bargain. 1.3 was the thickness. So if you go ahead and look at the notes there, it did decrease the grip size by 1. They do have a 1.5 millimeter version of this grip, so I'm assuming that's gonna maintain the original grip size. And this one came in at 19 grams, so it was comparable to the original synthetic grip. And finally, we have the fairway double-handed, and I got the blemished version. Getting the blemished version is not that far off from the regular. In fact, it's usually just cosmetic. Maybe it's just a slight discoloration of the leather, or maybe the logo was off-centered. But for $5 less, I would recommend getting the blemished version. And the specs came in at 1.46. So after I wrapped it on the grip, it came out exactly 4 1/4. So this maintained the original grip size. But you can see at 27 grams, it added 7 grams more than the original grip. So going back to some of the attributes of using a leather grip, if I were to pick something that'll add weight to the handle of a racket, then I'll definitely go with something of this thickness, like this fairway, which was 1.46. If I were to go for being able to feel the beveled edges of the pallet, then the Kimony Expert Techni grip would make sense, but I felt like it was a little bit too thin. So something like this Tennis Warehouse private label, which came in halfway in between, I think is a good choice. And finally, as far as being able to feel, to firm up the handle so you can feel more connected to the ball, well, that's a matter of preference. So, it's up to the player how they want their racket to feel in terms of that firmness. But if I were to pick one of these leather grips, I would pick the fairway. It's just that usually if you're going to get leather, you want to add weight. So that makes sense. Now, with all this talk about Kimony products, you may be wondering, where can I get them? If you live in the United States, I have 2 options. One, you can go to KimonyUSA.com and order directly from the distributor. Or 2, you can help support this channel by ordering from me directly. Just send me an email to amstringing@gmail.com. With either option, shipping is by USPS, and it takes about 4 to 5 business days. Thanks for watching. Happy gripping. I forgot to tell you the 4th reason. And let your grip play.